You know, in any high-stakes game, whether it's on the battlefield or in the boardroom, we're all taught to play by the rules. But what if the rules themselves are a trap? What if being honorable, being predictable, is actually the fastest way to lose? Well, today, we're diving into a timeless secret from Sun Tzu, and it's all about how strategic deception can be the real key to victory.
It sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? I mean, we're all supposed to value honor and fair play. But could there be a time when sticking to a rigid code of conduct, what some might call a pig-headed morality, could lead to an absolute total catastrophe? Let's look at a story from history that answers that question with a loud, resounding yes. So let's rewind the clock. Way back. We're going to ancient China, the year 638 BCE. And the man at the center of our story is Duke Xiang of Song. He's facing down the powerful Chu army at the Hongshu River, and he is about to make a choice that will be studied for thousands of years as a perfect example of what not to do.
Okay, so picture this. The massive Chu army starts crossing the river. Duke Xiang's advisor sees a golden opportunity. He's basically yelling, "They are many, we are few. Attack them now while they're stuck in the water." But the Duke, he refuses. Says a gentleman doesn't attack an enemy when they're vulnerable. Then, the Chu army makes it to the bank, but they're a total mess, scrambling to get into formation. The advisor begs him again, "Attack now, before they're ready." And again, the Duke refuses. He actually waits, and this is just astonishing. He waits until the enemy army is perfectly prepared before he finally gives the order to attack.
Well, the result was as predictable as it was tragic. The much smaller Song army was just crushed. The Duke's own elite guard was completely annihilated. And Duke Xiang himself, he was severely wounded and ended up dying from that injury about a year later. All because he stuck to a so-called honorable code that led to his own destruction.
So clearly there had to be a better way to do things. Duke Xiang's catastrophic failure really sets the stage for a much more powerful idea, a counter-principle championed by none other than Sun Tzu himself. The way of deception. And get this, more than 2,000 years later, Mao Zedong, in his famous work on protracted war, used Duke Xiang as the ultimate negative example. This quote just perfectly captures it, a total rejection of that predictable, self-defeating honor in favor of something much more pragmatic and a heck of a lot more effective. And this is the very heart of Sun Tzu's philosophy, all boiled down into 4 iconic characters, Bingjia Gui Dao Ye. It's as simple as it is profound. It means all warfare is based on deception. Talk about a complete 180 from Duke Xiang's worldview. So, what exactly is this Gui Dao? Well, it's way more nuanced than just, lying. It's the art of strategic illusion, of being flexible, of playing mind games. It's about making your opponent totally misjudge the situation. It's not about fighting harder, it's about fighting smarter, by controlling what your enemy thinks and what they see.
But hold on, this brings up a huge question. Why in the world would anyone, like Duke Xiang, fight by these seemingly suicidal rules in the first place? Was ancient warfare really some kind of gentleman's game? The real story is, well, it's a lot more political than that.
I mean, just look at some of these rules from the early Zhou dynasty. They seem almost absurdly chivalrous. Don't attack until the enemy is perfectly arranged. Don't capture old soldiers. It feels less like a war and more like some kind of highly organized sport. But believe it or not, there was a very practical reason for all of this.
So what's the real reason? Here's the brilliant political insight. You see, many of the lords of these warring states were actually relatives, all part of the Zhou emperor's extended family. These rules weren't really about honor. They were a family rulebook. It was a clever way for the central authority to keep any single state from getting too powerful by completely wiping out another. It was political control dressed up as chivalry, and poor Duke Xiang, he was fatally clinging to a system whose real purpose had vanished a long, long time ago.
Okay, so let's fast forward about 2,600 years to see how this ancient principle of Gui Dao is more relevant today than ever. We're going from ancient riverbeds in China to the high-tech dogfights of the 20th century. And the contrast just couldn't be more stark. On the one hand, you've got Duke Xiang's battle, predictable, rigid, a total failure. On the other, you have the 1982 Battle of the Baikal Valley. The Israeli Air Force was facing this really formidable Syrian missile defense system, and they decided they were not going to play by the rules of a direct assault.
Israel's strategy was a total masterclass in modern deception. First, the lure. They sent in unmanned drones to fake an attack. This tricked the Syrians into the second step, expose, by switching on their missile radars.
The moment they did that, Israel could locate them, pinpointing the exact origin of every single signal. And then finally, destroy. They launched anti-radiation missiles that homed right in on those signals, basically blinding the entire defense network before the real attack even began.
And the result of this modern Guidao? 19 Syrian missile batteries, the very weapon that had been their biggest threat, were completely wiped out in just a few minutes. It was this stunning, decisive victory, won not through brute force, but through brilliant deception.
So what can we pull from these two stories, separated by thousands of years? The core lesson is just as powerful today as it was in Sun Tzu's time.
The ultimate takeaway here is crystal clear. Clinging to predictable patterns and rigid rules when the stakes are high is a recipe for disaster. It doesn't matter if it's war, business, or negotiation. True genius isn't about following a script. It's about seeing the situation for what it really is, understanding your opponent, and using creativity to totally outthink them.
And that brings me to a final question for you to think about. Where in your own world, at work, in negotiations, even in daily life, where have you seen this play out? Where has a rigid adherence to how things are supposed to be done led to a missed opportunity, or maybe even to failure? It's a lesson from 2,500 years ago that is absolutely still shaping outcomes today.